1. AITA for not wanting to upgrade my house. I bought my house 11 years ago while I was married to my ex-husband. My ex had owned a house before that went into foreclosure and wasn't keen on buying another house. His credit was terrible, so he couldn't even get on the loan and didn't help with the down payment. So I ended up with it in the divorce, and during COVID made it my sanctuary, my Shangri-La, my major achievement that made me hold my head high. I learned to tile. I brought a sink home from Mexico and installed it myself. I covered an ugly cinder block wall with tongue and groove pine. It has been. The things have accomplished myself and chipped away at make me so proud of myself. I got remarried to a wonderful man who I have known for 10 years and has always been such a cheerleader for me when my now ex-husband never seemed to show his thrill for the upgrades. So, my house was built in 1905, and she is beautiful. Many upgrades, but also old clawfoot tub, some old brass faucets with beautiful detail, a very old toilet with a wooded tank, push-button flush at the bottom of the tank, and a copper water holder on the inside. Many wonderful turn-of-the-century nuggets of wonder. My new husband, however, is a contractor. He prefers new and more functional, as he says. I like to spend the modest amount of extra money I have on a sauna, fixing the deck, making a bigger garden. He wants to upgrade these old novelties. I think these old fixtures are what keep the era of the home and help it hold its value. Our 3 daughters share the bathroom with the clawfoot, and he is always harping on me. I finally blew up and yelled about fucking first world problems and how grossed out I am that if we have to totally redo a bathroom because our girls can't figure out how to use a shower curtain, then it is us that have failed as parents if they're so lazy or, dare I say, stupid. What should I do? Give in to the upgrades. Mind you, the house is mostly upgraded, just with the old charm. Or hold my ground because I think it actually adds value to keep these things. Or maybe it doesn't keep the value. Help me. And thanks. 2. AITA for playing pranks on my courtiers. 16 NB. And the Emperor of Rome and the Emperor of Pranks. I love throwing dinner parties where I invite all the guests to sit on the air cushions, and then I let out all the air so that they find themselves sitting on the floor. Other times, I throw parties where I give all of my guests fake food made of wax, wood, or ivory, while I eat real food myself. I keep lions and leopards that have been trained to be harmless as pets, and sometimes I have them brought into my parties while everyone is eating dessert to scare everyone who doesn't know they're harmless. Sometimes, I throw dinner parties where I invite 8 guests who all have an unusual physical trait in common, such as all bald men, all one-eyed men, all deaf men, or all fat men. It's always so funny when they arrive and pretend not to realize why they've been invited. I like having my chariot pulled by unusual animals, such as dogs, stags, lions, or elephants. One time, I even rode around naked in a chariot pulled by naked women. Instead of throwing out silver or gold coins to the masses like a boring emperor, I like giving out cattle, camels, donkeys, or deer, since it's more imperial to give away live animals. Sadly, a lot of those stuffy old Roman senators don't like my pranks. They also don't like me because I'm Syrian, and I've promoted the worship of the super-base Syrian sun god Elagabalus. They also don't like the fact that I like to dress in women's clothes, wear a wig, makeup, perfume, and jewelry, and call myself a lady. They also hate that I have lots of sex with both hot women and sexy men with big dicks, which I don't understand. Most of them like having sex with boys, so what's wrong with me having sex with men? Anyway, do you guys think I've done anything wrong? 3. AITA for not wanting to move again. Ida, I have no interest in moving, but my wife keeps looking at houses online. I've told her that if she finds the house she wants, we can move. The things she wants, that we don't currently have, is 1. A larger walk-in closet in the primary suite, 2. A soaking tub, and 3. A larger kitchen. Last night we looked at a house with a realtor, and she thought it was perfect, even though it doesn't one of her major requirements. Specifically, it's a 2-story with only a half bath and no bedrooms on the first floor. When we bought this house in 2016, she specifically wanted a 1-story home. We finished the basement in 2017. We remodeled our current kitchen completely in 2020, remodeled the ensuite, and enlarged the primary closet in 2022. We also added a large composite deck in 2023. We just converted a storage room in the basement to a sports bar in December. Not only are we 60, her mother is 80 plus and may end up living with us in the next 5 years. She says the new house is move-in ready, but was already talking about converting the formal dining room to a bedroom for her mother. AITA for bringing up these objections? Or for being annoyed that all of our improvements, over $100,000, are not good enough? For AITA for telling my coworker she also has thin hair 25F, work at a very small startup company. By very small, I mean there are only 5 employees in total, including me. Because of the small size, getting along with my coworkers has been easy. We've all grown really close since we see each other every day, and we even go out to bars together after work. Now for the story. Late last week, I wore my hair in 2 braids to work. I wanted to try a new style and felt really cute with them. When I arrived, my coworker Annie, 27F and fake name, looked at me and said, "Wow, I never realized how thin your hair is." When she said the comment, I wasn't hurt or offended. I've always had thin hair. It's just how I was born. I replied back smiling saying, "Yeah, you too? Twins." Her reaction after I made the comment completely took me by surprise and shocked me because she immediately said, "Go to hell." I was confused because Annie also has thin hair. She then proceeded to ignore me the rest of the shift. Fast forward to today, Annie still has been completely avoiding me and seems to be trying to get the rest of the office to turn against me. Because we're such a small team, my coworkers have been filling me in on what she's saying about me behind my back. I even learned that once our boss returns from vacation, she plans to report me for workplace bullying. My coworkers aren't into taking sides, and I am not asking them to because this issue is between Annie and me. However, one of them approached me today advising me to apologize, but I am not sure if I should. I don't feel bad for anything I did, so that is why I turned to this forum to see if I am the asshole. I am looking for advice on whether I should apologize or if there's a better way to handle this. For people wanting an update, my boss doesn't come back until this Friday. If a meeting does happen, I will share. Thanks for all the advice. I really appreciate it. I put a small update in the comments to answer frequently asked questions. Have you tried speaking to Annie? Yes, I have tried speaking to Annie one-on-one again to discuss the issue, but she has turned me down 5 times. She has told me she doesn't feel comfortable talking to me without our boss present. Did you try to contact your boss? Yes, I did contact my boss. We are a small company, so he is HR/CEO/etc. I told him about the situation once I found out she was going to report me for workplace bullying. I only sent the one text message on Microsoft Teams. He told us in the case of emergencies to use his personal number, but to me this situation doesn't classify as an emergency and can be handled when he gets back. I know he is on vacation, and bothering him multiple times while he's away isn't something I want to do. Do you have thin hair or fine hair? Yes, I do have thin hair. Ick about fine hair. I have been told by a hairstylist that I have thin hair. I don't have much hair on my head, but like I said, it's something I have always had. My entire mom's side of the family has it too. I always found the beauty in it because it reminds me of grandma, smiley face. Verdict, not the asshole. Mini update in the comments March 20th, 2026, 2 days later. Hello commenters. I am writing this in the comments because I don't want to go over the character count. First off, thank you for all the advice. I am still learning to grow a backbone even at the age of 25, but after reading all the support it really has given me confidence. An update for today, Friday morning. I have been scheduled for a meeting with Annie and my boss at 1:30 p.m., and I am not allowed to discuss about the matter until then. Wish me luck. I wrote down everything and kept documents, so I feel prepared for it. Even if things don't go in my favor, I will be okay. I have always been a glass half full kind of gal. I will make an update post at the end of the day, hopefully. Update March 25th, 2026, 5 days after last update. Hello everyone. Thank you all for your patience. After work on Friday, my boyfriend took me out for the weekend. He knew the whole thing had been really stressing me out. Anyways, I am finally back home and have my laptop, so here is the update. Last Friday, my boss called Annie and me into his office for a meeting. I came prepared with documents. It consisted of 2 emails showing I had tried 5 times to resolve things with her, a document that had our full interaction typed out, word for word, and a coworker's statement saying Annie had been avoiding me, not doing some work tasks because of me, leaving work early 3 times to avoid closing with me, and speaking negatively about me. At the meeting, my boss let Annie speak first. She claimed she tried to start a friendly conversation about hair. I then made a random rude comment about her hair thinning which angered her. Annie then said her comment go to hell, was out of anger and didn't mean it. When it was my turn, I showed my boss the document that outlined Annie and I's entire conversation from that day. I turned to Annie and explained I meant no harm, and it was a misunderstanding. My boss slid the document to Annie after reading it. As Annie read it, she got emotional and started crying. She explained she's very insecure about her hair due to bleach damage and wears extensions to make her hair appear fuller, but hasn't worn them the past month because she can't keep them up. Annie then stepped out to the bathroom to fix herself. During her time away, I showed my boss the rest of my documents. When she returned, he asked why she ignored my attempts to resolve things, and she said she wasn't comfortable being alone with me. He then brought up the co-worker's statement and showed her the document. Annie read it and denied most of it, explaining how she always does her work. She said she couldn't really remember not doing her work because she always does it. My boss ended the meeting by saying workplace conflict like this shouldn't escalate, especially over something personal. He gave Annie a written warning for not completing work, speaking poorly about a coworker to others, and leaving early multiple times. My boss gave her the choice of leaving early, and she left. Afterward, my boss asked me to stay so he can speak to me. He explained he had been considering me for a leadership role, but now has doubts because I didn't resolve the issue. I explained to him I tried, but he wasn't having it and told me he already knows everything about the situation. At the end, he clarified I wouldn't be punished and said he's being hard on me because he sees leadership potential. He then offered to let me leave early, and I went home. I called my boyfriend when I got to my car. After explaining how it went, he surprised me with a weekend getaway to San Diego. On Friday, we were in La Jolla at the beach, and on Saturday, we went to a Savannah Bananas game at Petco Park. Thank you everyone for the support, advice, and being here with me on my Reddit journey. Have a good day. Today, March 25th, I got very impatient on waiting for approval from mods, so I decided to just post my update on my profile. 5. AITA for trying to usurp my brother? I, 23M, feel pretty confident that I've always been the rightful heir to my father's throne, but my brother, 35-52M, let's call him Arses, insists on being crowned King of Kings just because he's the eldest son. Our mother, the greatest queen we've had in generations, agrees with me and says that our father was still deliberating on his deathbed. In fact, she's supported my claim for years and says that Arses was only ever a candidate to avoid more rebellions. I understand that being the eldest usually makes people think they're their father's heirs, but it's really unreasonable IMO. Our father wasn't even king yet when Arses was born. They weren't even in line for the throne before mother's friends helped them usurp the throne for themselves. If he wasn't born to royalty, it doesn't seem right that he should be king. There's an established precedent for this. Darius the Great made Xerxes I his heir for exactly that reason, and I don't see why we should change the rules now. Plus, Arses' wife and all of their children are fruit of a poison tree. Her family were almost all rebels, and I think her last brother is scheming against me. Mother understands this. She says they should all be executed so Arses can marry a better match whose family didn't murder our eldest sister, but Arses refuses. How can you be king if your wife is a traitor to the empire? That alone should make me the heir according to mother. Arses' wife doesn't even respect our traditions, either. She rides around on a palanquin with open curtains, in full view of lesser nobles and even peasants. She's got open curtains for everyone to see her like some sort of commoner, and Arses just lets her do this. I would never stand for that sort of thing. In fact, when some of our cousins broke court protocol with me, I cut off their hands like a responsible ruler. Then there's the experience issue. Eldest son of the king for years, but nobody even knows what Arses does for the empire. Meanwhile, I've been hard at work as a Karanos, military viceroy for all of the Anatolian satrapies. I reclaimed our lost territories from the Greeks. I made the alliance with Sparta. I got the ineffective satraps back in line around a common cause, and they all support me up here. The only one who doesn't is Arses' traitorous brother-in-law, and that's because his whole family are natural traitors according to mother. But when I tried to point all of this out and take Arses' place at the coronation, everyone freaked out, and I think I only escaped execution because mother was there. Personally, I think I should hire 10K or so mercenaries and try again, but what do you think? Ida? 6. AITA for refusing to apologize to my partner's aunt? I've been with my girlfriend for around 5 years. Every year her family has 2 to 3 get-togethers at a local pub. Last year, I was in hospital for a few weeks. It was pretty serious, and I've been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. Apart from my girlfriend, her mom, and my close family, no one knows what was wrong, but they do know I was in hospital, and it's not something I like talking about. Her family had a get together last weekend, and I was talking to her aunt, and she asked how I was. I told her I was doing okay now and thanked her for her concern. She asked what it was that put me in hospital. I told her it's not really something I want to go into and changed the subject. After a minute, she asked again what it was. She mentioned it must be serious if I was in there over 3 weeks. I again reminded her I didn't want to talk about it. She brought it up again. I told her if she mentioned it again, I was just going to walk away since she already knows I'm not going to discuss it, and I told her again to stop bringing it up. She said she was just being friendly, and it's normal to want to know. She mentioned it again, so I walked away. She then told my girlfriend's mom that I was rude and that I should apologize to her. I refused this and said it's her who owes me an apology. My girlfriend said that I should maybe apologize just to keep the peace, but I refused. AITA for refusing to apologize? 7. AITA for disciplining another person's kid. I live at my aunt's house right now as I'm working for their business and have my own room in their house nearby their kid's room. Their kid is a 7-year-old boy with a slight attitude problem, always making really loud smacks with his toys despite being asked to quiet down, telling his mom and dad, aunt and uncle, to be quiet when they tell him off, screeching when doesn't receive 100% of their attention. A few times he leaves shit on the stairs like toys or swords, and I nearly fall and eat shit BC of them, so I picked them up, threw them in his room, and told him I nearly tripped. It wasn't so bad. Not gonna lie, it's the telling his parents to shut up when they're telling him something is what gets to me. I often chime in making a face at him and telling him to never speak like that to his parents, and he does listen in the moment, then just goes back to telling them to shut up. I wouldn't say he's a bad enough kid to go on world's strictest parents or anything like that, but when he misbehaves it boils my blood. And it doesn't help that I'm not the most fond of children in general. It's really annoying. And although my aunt doesn't complain about me telling him to not speak like that to his parents, I feel like nobody else takes responsibility for disciplining him like they should. I feel like they sometimes make a face at me when I get involved. I was a pretty naughty kid too, but now, being an adult and having to live with one is very frustrating. Ida, for getting involved when the kid is being disrespectful? I'm not his parent, but I feel like they're not doing enough. 8. AITA for a declining visit from my mother? It was recently my 40th birthday. I had planned a reset weekend where I just got to be alone and do what felt right for me, without meeting anyone else's expectations. I let my mother, 60s know this, and made plans to meet with her the following weekend. On the Friday night, my mother sent me a message stating she would like to see me the next day and asking what time would suit. I politely declined as I had other plans, and reminded her that we would be catching up the next weekend. A few hours later, she told me she was hurt as she just wanted to have a coffee and give you a gift. I acknowledged her feelings and said that my plans for the weekend were about how I wanted to spend my birthday. She now wants to talk about what happened and has said I was selfish for declining her visit. I feel like she's trying to make me responsible for her emotions. And if there's any time to be selfish, it's on your birthday. AITA for this. 9. AITA for telling my friend that she does not remember 9/11. My friend, born 1998, was 3 years old when 9/11 happened. She has told the story a million times of being in class and having TVs wheeled in to show the kids what was happening on screen. She will bring up this story anytime 9/11 is mentioned. She is the oldest in our friend group, and the rest of us were not even alive when 9/11 happened. Recently, she retold this story, and when she said she was in class, someone asked her what classes they had for 3-year-olds. She tried to say she was in pre-K, but had previously told me she didn't even go to pre-K, and her mom put her straight in kindergarten at 5. I brought this up, and she changed her answer and said it was actually daycare. Then that same person asked how she was able to vividly remember the events of 9/11 at just 3 years old, and she claimed she was so traumatized she was able to form a core memory. She continued her story by saying her mom was actually evacuated from where she worked in Texas, BC. Everyone was scared they would hit another high-rise building. But she had told me before that during her early childhood her mom didn't work. She then tried to say her being evacuated from the building is the reason she quit. This basically turned into her defending her memory of 9/11 to a group of about 5 people who continued to poke holes in her story. At one point when we were alone, I told her she probably at 3 years old did not understand what was going on or form any type of memory about 9/11 BC. Her story has so many inconsistencies with other stories from her childhood, and that she probably only thinks she remembers 9/11 BC of media depictions and what people told her happened on that day. She is a known dramatic sparkles. Basically, everyone knows she dramatizes her stories. But now she is mad at me, BC. I don't believe her and told her the story is inconsistent. I didn't gang up on her with everyone else when she brought it up again privately, is when I explained how I felt. AITA 10. AITA for interpreting a private conversation for my deaf coworker. A couple years ago, I, 18 at the time, worked at a school for the deaf in Maine. One of my classrooms had a hearing teacher who didn't really understand accessibility. One day, she was talking to the speech therapist in the classroom. It wasn't super loud, but I could hear it with my hearing aids. My coworker, who is completely deaf, asked me what they were saying. I decided to interpret. When the teacher saw me signing, she got very angry. She said I was violating her privacy and that not everything is for everyone to hear. While I recognized that it may have been semi-private, they were talking loud enough for me to hear. Why should the only deaf staff be excluded? I got in trouble, but I felt as though they should have left the room if it was so secretive. So, AITA for interpreting their discussion. 11. AITA for giving away gifts because they had the wrong name. My husband, 30, and I, 30, have a 3-year-old son together. My in-laws have a tradition where they take their dad's middle name as their first name and they go by their middle name. For example, my husband's name is West Allen and he goes by Allen, and our son is Alan Dean and he would go by Dean. I was happy to be part of the tradition since I knew it meant a lot to my husband and in-laws. His middle name came from my grandpa. I was happy, but also felt like his name wasn't his own. We didn't tell anyone until my son was born that although his legal name is still Alan Dean, he would go by AD. I can't express how happy I am to call him AD, and luckily most people were happy too, except one. Before he was born, my mom was so excited she got custom-made everything with the name Dean on it. I accepted them not knowing until later that we would be calling him AD. My mom was clearly upset when we told her, but I assured her that I would still use the items since it was so last minute. I did not realize at the time that this would be a continued issue with my mom. She called him Dean whenever he was near her, and in turn had our distanced family, who communicated through her, call him Dean as well. After a few months of this, I finally asked why she won't call him AD, and she said it was because she had a resident when she worked at a nursing home named AD, and he was mean and ugly to her, and she can only think of that old man when she hears the name. She hadn't worked in that nursing home in years, and only worked for 3 years there. I told her that was crazy, but she refused to budge. Years later, and not only does she still call him Dean, but she still gets custom things with his name, and even though I made it clear that he is AD, she still gets him shirts and things with Dean on them. I told her to her face that he won't wear them at my house, and she just gets upset and says just use them as play clothes if I hate them so much. I end up throwing all the items in a pile in his closet. Last week I was cleaning out his closet and finally decided to toss out all the items. I put it all together and posted on a mom Facebook group if anyone had a little Dean that would want the items. Someone in the group was friends with my mom and apparently asked her about the items. My mom was furious and messaged me asking why I was getting rid of all her stuff. I told her that I have explained plenty of times that I wasn't going to use this stuff, and she refused to keep it, so I was giving it to someone that would. She discussed with me for a long time, and I eventually gave up replying. Later I got a call from my grandpa saying that I upset her and that I should be grateful for the custom items. I told him that my MIL got him custom items too, and they have a D on them without issue. I said it's not that I'm not grateful, it is that she is selfish. He tried to convince me to apologize to her, and I refused. My sister and one of my brothers also agreed with mom, but I tell them all the same thing. 12. AITA for screaming in my mom's ear. A 6-month-old female am learning to use my voice. Well, one day my mommy, as she calls herself, was hanging out next to me. Well, unbeknownst to myself, I guess my hand got caught in her hair, which she could argue otherwise that I purposefully grabbed her hair, and I wanted my thumb in my mouth, so I pulled my mom's hair and her head to my mouth. At that moment, though I didn't want my thumb in my mouth anymore, I wanted to practice my voice and scream at the top of my lungs as high-pitched as possible. Mommy apparently said she almost went deaf, whatever that means. and said I did it on purpose. Clearly it was an accident, and I just wanted to have my go at operas singing. Amita for doing this to my mom. 13. AITA for comparing my cat to my friend's child. So have a friend with a very disabled, nonverbal child. Her life revolves around her. Although she's never had a bad experience with childcare, she doesn't trust anyone to look after her child but her. She lets her go to school and some activities, and she occasionally stays with her father, but just hiring a babysitter, it would be a specialist one of course, is out of the question. She was very unhappy when the child's father took her to Brazil to spend time with her grandparents, as she didn't trust she would be safe. She is highly critical of her daughter's teachers and activity carers. This is all fair enough. She's always saying I should go on holiday, or go for a break, or go traveling and rent my place out. She returns to the subject over and over. It's because she's had to rent some places at sky-high prices for short lets and thinks I'd be crazy not to rent my place out. I always reply that the house is quirky and not really suitable for renting out, that I hate the idea of people going through my stuff. Plus, what about the cat? Because I have a beloved cat. She replies, "Oh, he'll be fine," or "You can put him in a kennels and still make a big profit," or "What harm could possibly come to him?" I got tired of this, and last time I saw her I responded, "I would have thought you'd understand, as you don't trust strangers around your kid. Don't you understand that I feel the same way about the cat? Because he can't tell me if something is wrong, just like your child can't tell you." She went into a huff and managed to choke out the words. She was so angry. "Well, I am certainly a bit offended that you'd compare my child to a cat." Then left. Should I just not have said anything? I suppose it brought up the topic that both the cat and the child are nonverbal, and I suppose she might have thought I was therefore putting them on a level, as if her child was subhuman. That was not my intention. But should I apologize? I would like to edit here to thank everyone who has commented. We may not agree on the topic, but it's given me food for thought X14. AITA for not giving my family member a Spice Village AITA. I recently stumbled upon the entire 1994 Lenox House Village Spice set at a thrift. As some of you may know, this is something very sought after and worth quite a bit of money. I bought it hoping I'd be able to resell it for a very decent price, below market average, yet still make a small profit. Now my family is upset with me because I'm not giving it to one of my family members. For reference, I am a 20-year-old female who doesn't come from a place of money and just got laid off from work and in need of a job. However, this family member, 36 female, is incredibly well off and has quite a bit of money. Now everyone is mad at me because I'm going against the family for not giving the Spice Village to her. Even though my family member is someone who I am not close with, and to my belief they don't ever try to talk to me. They offered $200 for it, and I said I could give them a few pieces for that, but not the entire set since it realistically is worth quite a bit more than that. I know it probably sounds like it, but I'm not doing this because I'm money hungry, nor would I consider myself a reseller. I just need to be able to have some money while I'm trying to find a stable income. As someone who also really likes collecting odds and ends, I can understand why this may upset the family member. But if it was that important, I feel as if she would have given me a fair price. Side note, this family member already bought the entire remake of the Spice Villages little while back, which to my belief is cost even more than $200. Asterisk edit, I did tell her I'm looking for about $60 to $70 a pace, and didn't get a response back yet. 15. AITA for a joke in an email. My 25M best friend Tony 21M and I love responding to spam emails. We do it so we can mess with the scammers sending them and waste their time. It's to the point that we have a throwaway email for the sole purpose of replying to spam emails. Our favorites are when they send a form to put your information in because we put the most outlandish answers. And it's hilarious when they don't read it, then send something like, "I am satisfied with your information," after we send the form back. A couple of examples of the stuff we put would be address, 690, Lightning Rod Avenue sex, often occupation, teeth cleaner religion, pacology, worship of pelicans, just random, outlandish stuff like that. It's stupid, but we find it fun, and coming up with stuff is hilarious. Anyway, we got one recently, and one of the things the scammer asked for was gender. I was trying to think of something funny I could put when Tony pitched various. It was so random, and I wasn't expecting it, and I thought that was hilarious, so I put it down. We were out with a couple friends today, and one friend, Bill, 26M, brought his girlfriend, Peggy, 25F, with him, which was fine. All of our girlfriends were there. Bill asked if we had any other email highlights, so we showed the group the most recent email chain. They read it and thought it was funny until Peggy came to gender various. She started telling us that putting that was offensive. She went on a rant about how we shouldn't be joking about gender because some people struggle with their gender identity and jokes would be bad for mental health. I'd understand where she was coming from if I actually put something offensive, but I don't think we did anything wrong because 1. It was our gender we joked about, not anyone else's. 2. The joke wasn't even about a specific gender. We put various because it was so random that it made me laugh. And 3. Chances are the scammer didn't even read it. They rarely read the emails we send. We told her why we didn't think putting various was that big a deal. But she kept getting more and more upset until she eventually called us bigots and stormed off. AITA for a joke in an email. 16. AITA for forgetting my friend's birthday. So I have been a very close friend with this person for over a decade. And yesterday I forgot it was their birthday. We've been long-distance friends for a while. I moved away from my home state the same year we became close. I've never missed a birthday of hers, but it slipped my mind on the day. She texted me at midnight saying I don't care about her. I apologized, but she hasn't replied. It's only been a day since her birthday, and it's eating me alive. I'm not going to lie, lol. I feel like not missing a birthday and sending paragraphs every year for 10 years has to amount to something, right? Of course, I should remember every birthday. It's not like I meant to forget. Of course, I'm an asshole for forgetting. I can admit that. But do you think she wouldn't want to be friends with me anymore because of this? Am I overreacting or trying to make myself the victim here? 17. AITA for not watching videos my friend sends me. My friend and I will be on the phone talking about a new restaurant or nature walk, and I'll ask, "Where is it?" And then their response is, "I'm not telling you because you don't watch the videos I send you on TikTok or Instagram, don't even use TikTok, and I barely go on Insta." When I do send her a video occasionally, she has said, "I don't watch what you send me because you don't watch TikToks I send you." I am extremely unbothered if she doesn't watch what I send her, but I think she almost punished me just for not watching videos. Ida, I'm honestly so confused. Is this what it's gotten to now with social media and friendships? If so, I will be switching to a Nokia. Edit when it gets brought up, I do tell her I don't use TikTok and don't like the app, and I'll get a response like, "But still," or, "But it's me." And I'm just dumbfounded by that response because what else am I mean to say to get her to understand that I simply do not use the app nor watch videos all day on my phone? 18. AITA for absolutely hating my little sister. 19 TM, still live with my parents because rent in my area is extremely high. I'm a college student majoring in forensic psychology. I get in arguments with my little sister, 16F, who we'll call KV. KV is extremely spoiled by our parents and acts out when she doesn't get what she wants. The recent event leading to this post started with a computer. KV asked to borrow the computer I rent from school. I rent it every semester for $45 so I can take online courses. When I asked why she didn't stay after school with our other sibling who gets help and tutoring Wednesday through Thursday, she said, "Because I don't want to be at school that long." I said I need my computer for a class, and she told me that her stuff was due immediately. I tried to stay calm and explain that she can't just expect me to give up my computer as her last resort every time. I asked what she needed it for, and she replied schoolwork in a snotty tone. I told her if she was going to have attitude, I wasn't going to let her use the computer anymore. But now she's gone to my parents and said I'm the one who needs back off because I'm older and I only live here because I'm homeless and lazy. My mom agreed with her, and now I'm pissed at them both. So I need some perspective, AITA. 19. AITA for taking his spot at the co-working space. I 36M go to a co-working space regularly. It's right by my house, so I typically just pop in, have a coffee, and say hello to my friends, more of a social thing. Sometimes, however, I don't have many meetings, so I will hang around and work. This is one such time. I put my laptop etc. down and started working. I was particularly early this day. At around 9 a.m., a man, 35M-ish, approached me and asked me to move as this was his spot. I said sarcastically, I didn't know there were assigned spots. He said, "There's not. That's just where I always sits." I said that I didn't think it was necessary for me to move, but he was welcome to join my table. He said, "There may not be assigned spots, but me and my friends sit here every day at the same time. As a courtesy, can you please give me my spot?" "There are many open ones," I said. I feel like there are many open ones goes both ways. We're done here, man. And didn't move. He stormed off. I ended up leaving just a bit later, maybe a half hour, and he threw himself into the spot as soon as I left. Ida, 20. AITA for thinking my baby mama was doing a prank. First time poster. Be kind. Long story short, I met this girl a while back, and we slept together one night. Things didn't end well. I took full responsibility for it. So naturally, I was blocked on everything. A couple weeks later, she tells me she's pregnant. We were both clean, consenting adults, and she was on birth control. She even took a plan B to not risk it. Not 100% effective, but pretty high. 2 modes of contraceptives does raise questions, but I saw it as trying to be extra sure. So much for that. At the time of the news, we were both seeing other people, so we stayed in touch, but apart. Now we get to the point where we are both single, and I want to give us a try. She is on the fence, rightfully so, but now there are times where I don't hear from her for days. I send a message here and there to let her know I'm still there for her, but for the most part it feels like I'm talking to myself. She lets me know I'm welcome to the baby appointments, but I have yet to attend one as to her not telling me. The most recent one she told me about, she had to cancel for work reasons. Last night, a day before April 1st, she sends a message BTW. I'm 8 weeks, and we met 5 weeks ago. I first thought she was telling me to give her more space and reduce the amount of messages because I'm coming off too strong too soon. But then it clicks that she might be telling me that this isn't my baby, that it never was, that it was a cruel prank for how our initial meetup ended. I did the math, and we are looking at maybe a week or 2 gap, not 3, but still big enough to question things. This is where I may be the ass. So my knee-jerk reaction is to applaud her on the joke. I'm dying on the inside. And tell her that if she lied about not sleeping with anyone before me, then I should probably go get tested. I don't hear anything back until this morning. I wake up to her messages saying how dare I accuse her of sleeping around and that this isn't a prank. That she didn't sleep with anyone but her ex months ago. She just sat down and did the math last night. That I'm an awful person for thinking such things. I feel like my reaction was justified due to the fact that she left that as the last message of the night. So Reddit AITA for thinking she was pulling this elaborate prank on me and revealing it as April 1st was hours away. 21. AITA for not wanting to do my stepfather's laundry. 18. Stepfather is in his late 40s. I moved in with him and my mom about 3 months ago, but he's very backwards about almost everything. He cuts the internet off without telling me what I did wrong. So I never know until I'm in a call with my friends and I suddenly get booted off. We've had a talk about what he expects from me, and all he wanted me to do was to get up earlier to help around the house. I didn't think that was asking too much, as I already helped around the house and did what was expected of me. Anyways, after that things were good for a while, but last night he shut the internet off again even though I hadn't done anything wrong. I was told it was because I didn't sew their laundry. No one told me to. And why would I be expected to do your laundry? We're both adults. I should do mine, and you should do yours. I don't mind to help with his laundry as it is a mountain of fabric, but I don't think I should be expected to. No one even made it clear that. That should have been a responsibility. There are a bunch of other things that he does that doesn't make sense, like telling me to get a job when he doesn't have one. I've been looking ever since I turned 18, but this would be 5 paragraphs long if I explained that. I don't believe that I'm mean to him, and I don't intentionally do stuff to tick him off. I'd say I'm pretty nice to him. I offer to do stuff for him and whatnot, but he keeps pulling shit out of his ass and expecting me to do it without telling me. 22. AITA for being upset at the comparison. So I, 20M, and my GF, 20F, had an argument. I made the mistake of calling one of my friends pretty in a conversation we had a long time ago. She went through my phone and found it. It doesn't properly translate to English me calling her pretty, but more or less the same thing. It was a friend of mine who wanted to come over to my place. My grandparents were there, and I live with them, to talk about something. I misunderstood something and offered her a cup of tea and asked what she, calling her pretty, but translates maybe closer to dear in context, but I'm probably defending myself, would like. Now we were talking about, and she was outrightly upset, but she compared it to something I had once caught her doing with her ex, situationship. Before that I had been upset, she still followed this people she had a connection with. The guy was flirting with her, and to her credit, she skirted around it for a while until eventually she basically also flirted back. By flirting, I mean the guy hinting towards something and her basically hinting back. Now, they also talked about me when she was trying to bring up having a BF to stop the advances, I guess, but I ended up being the butt of their jokes. I was really pissed with her and ended up saying very mean things to her, like calling her a monster, but ended up forgiving her. Yes, could be very dumb. Now I'm okay with her being upset, but am I overreacting for thinking these are two vastly different things? 23. AITA for not taking care of my hair. My mom, 47F, was telling me how I should get a trim while we were on the ride back home. I, 16NB, said no because I thought I could just do it myself. Yes, I cut my own hair. She then started to tell me how other girls have their curly hair cleaned and kept, while pointing to some girl that had 3C hair that was kept, while also telling me that I don't even brush my hair, but just put it in a hair tie if she tells me to brush them quick thing. I have wavy, 2B I believe, hair that gets more messy, and frizzy when brushed, which is why I brush them before I shower. And I do not own any products that are fit for my hair type. I told her about that, but a little over 20 seconds, she started to cry and said that how me and my dad don't even listen to her, and cried about how we didn't need her. No one said anything about that until she brought it up, and said that if she died, then I'll realize how right she was. I don't even know how it escalated from her telling me that I should brush my hair to her crying about how nobody needed her. So am I the asshole? 24. AITA for leading expeditions in the Australian wild that were maybe a little ambitious? Guten Tag, my dear friends. I am writing to you on a fine sunny day somewhere in the deserts of Central Australia. I am currently attempting to cross from the Condamine River on the east coast to the Swan River on the west. We are a little hot, a bit hungry, and a little off target, but I will not let these trifles stop us. I write to you because it has come to my attention that some so-called historians have dubbed me Australia's worst explorer and a dangerous fool. I am, of course, deeply offended and would like to correct the record. My first crossing of Australia, from Moreton Bay to Port Essington in 1844, was a remarkable achievement. They told us we needed at least £5,000 to fund this expedition, and I managed with barely £500 in donations. They said I could not do it with wagons and bullocks, and yet we still had 7 of the 16 left by the end. The wagons broke on day 2, and the bullocks were incredibly difficult to manage, but not totally impossible. They told us that we needed good experienced colonial lads to make it through, and I succeeded with a few young chums fresh off the boat. Roper was a fool, Murphy just a boy, Calvert was inoffensive, and Phillips, an ex-convict yet dependable. They may have grumbled and whined the entire time, and lost themselves repeatedly, but the Lord had a plan when he put us on the same ship to Australia all those years ago. Now these men are famous, and they owe this to me and my labors. Now, it is true that we ran out of flour, and sugar, and salt, but we made do on all matter of exotic plants, only a few of which made us sick. Not even deathly sick, merely burning lips and loose bowels, and unlike most expeditions on land and sea, not one man died of illness or the scurvy. Our salvation was the meat from the bullocks, ingeniously dried in the sun in the manner of the Indians of the Americas. It is true that we could not hunt as effectively as we would have liked. We shot a few emus or kangaroos, but we did shoot many hundreds of bats, and they are in fact edible, if you can manage to keep it in your stomach. It is also true that we took 14 months in lieu of 6, but science cannot be rushed. The hundreds of specimens that burdened our bullocks for months would have been invaluable to the science of botany had they survived that blasted river. It is now impossible to identify which plants I discovered, but it certainly had the potential to have been impressive. And I cannot be blamed for the death of poor Mr. Gilbert, our ornithologist. We thought it wise to camp in blackfellow campsites, because they were always close to food and water, and they held stores of food left behind. The attack on that fateful night was random and could not have been foreseen. We only ever treated kindly with the blacks, and others had gifted us tasty foods and guided us true. We perhaps were unlucky to mix with the wrong sort. My chief advisor, a black fellow named Charlie, deserves far more blame than I for our delays. That drunkard may have saved our lives on several occasions, but he was slow to rise, slow to manage the bullocks, and a rebellious rascal. He corrupted his junior, Brown, and had the gall to beat my jaw with his fist when I scolded him, and threatened to shoot Mr. Gilbert in an altercation. He was lucky I found him useful enough to continue with us, and not left abandoned in the wilderness. My crew survived 14 months of heat and hunger with only minor spear injuries, having accomplished a marvelous feat of exploration, which is why we decided to try crossing east to west in 1846, and we would have made it if my crew had not rebelled 6 months in. These colonial Englishmen accused me of deadly mismanagement, while in Europe I was being awarded medals of excellence for my achievements. What irony! Third time's the charm. There will be an enormous celebration when we one day arrive at the Swan River colony. So please, dear reader, tell me, am I the ass for leading an expedition that suffered a few setbacks? And another one that admittedly turned back? 25. AITA for wanting to touch the Sword of Zerial? I apologize for the clickbait title. There's a bit more to it than that, as with most things. I'm not sure how often this one comes up in these forums, but based on my experience with the module, I imagine it might be a fair bit. This is not a story where anyone behaved perfectly. I'm sure much of what I'm about to describe reflects poorly on all parties involved, myself included. In either case, this campaign has been weighing on my mind for several years at this point, and I think I'm ready to hear if it was me who was the asshole. Subtext. This, as the title implies, was a playthrough of Baldur's Gate, Descent into Avernus, though heavily modified to fit the campaign setting of Grim Hollow, but that is not relevant to this story. As such, spoilers for that module ahead. This was a side game that a handful of players from our main group played on weekends where not everyone was available for our normal sessions. As of 3 years ago, I am no longer on speaking terms with anyone from this group, but for reasons about 80% unrelated to this story. Fair warning, I tend to yap. Cast. 3 members of our normal group participated, with a party of 4 between us. The DM, 2 DMPCs, a changeling ranger/fighter, and a Kanka druid. This is not a horror story about DMPCs. To his credit, the DM handles them fairly well, and we all trusted him to do so. The fighter, samurai subclass, range DPS, started the campaign impersonating a human he knew in his backstory, and wanted to carry on his legacy by literally carrying it on after his death. The druid, just land subclass I think, main support, was a father who lost his adoptive daughter to a unique kind of curse from the Grim Hollow setting, which allowed an archdemon, setting specific stuff, just think of them like an evil god equivalent, to claim her soul and prevent conventional resurrection. Myself, tiefling paladin/monk, an unconventional multi-class, but I wanted to try something unique and new. His name was Rue, which I will use for simplicity, and his subclasses were Ancient's Paladin and Astral Self-Monk, melee DPS plus off support. Rue was a war criminal from an event in Grim Hollow's history 1,500 years prior, who had spent the time since Aleshi, his punishment. Time had stripped most of his memory of who he was, but his curse/oath still prevented him from owning material wealth or wielding weapon star. His astral form was the Leshy personality, and his ancient spells were its abilities, so he was technically neither of those classes in universe, just for flavoring their powers to portray that story. Another player whom I shall call Jim, Tiefling Artificer. This player, simply put, is the reason I am no longer on speaking terms with the rest of this group. I will not be speaking of him kindly, but I will try to be factual for the sake of the story. His Artificer, Alchemist subclass, range DPS plus off support asterisk, was born into a noble family of our campaign's equivalent of Elturel, the city Zerial drags into Avernus. But he was born a tiefling from a deal one of his ancestors made with a devil long ago, and was outcast from his family because of it. An NPC named Crikendolt and his pet Abyssal Chicken. Our party had a bad habit of picking up strays from the module. Crikendolt is the only one relevant to this story though. He is a bearded devil found on the path of demons. Story time. To summarize the mostly uneventful first half of the module, we speedran the sections before Elturel gets pulled into Avernus, starting at leveling 3, skipping the first half, and blitzing through the rest in like 2 sessions. We all just wanted to get to the part where we stab devils, DM included, but we did the obligatory plot setup. Above table, we all knew that the Sword of Zerial would be a plot point, and had an idea of how it was supposed to work normally. First person to touch it becomes its wielder. But we were discussing it in a way that more resembled Arthurian legend, i.e. Excalibur, for our playthrough, in that the sword would choose its wielder based on their virtues and history. as any good collaborative storytellers should do with a MacGuffin like the Sword of Zariel. We tried to discuss in advance who amongst our characters would eventually get the sword, to which Jim on no less than 2 occasions responded instantly and confidently with me, of course, then backpedaling to say he was kidding. On other occasions, he was insisting that it would be really funny if his character got it, as he was a ranged spellcaster who barely ever attacked with weapons. He did eventually pick up a dwarven thrower that the DM allowed him to attune to, which became the basis of his "I use weapons to" retort later. This did fit his brand of abrupt humor, but it's also not the first time he had done it in bad taste, so I'm unconvinced he wasn't at least half serious, but I leave it to your discretion. The DM said that under no uncertain terms he did not want the DMPCs to have the sword. I had expressed in these conversations that I thought it would be interesting if Rue were to be rejected by the sword. Aiding in a genocide might have that effect, as Rue's story was not so much redeeming himself. His soul was damned by a deal with Levistus. There was never going to be redemption for him, but more about accepting who he was and why he was that way, so that he can try to make something of the time he has left and finally pass on peacefully. Well, whatever peace he could take. With him to an icy trophy room. The sword's rejection would be a good wake-up call for him, as he was an undeniably cruel individual despite his good intentions. He was a very ends justify the means kind of character. That, and since my character was the only member of the party who fought in melee, I believed it was at least mechanically appropriate for him to try first, as Rue would make the best use of it on the slim chance he had displayed enough good intentions by that point to be considered worthy, unlikely as it was, and would be just as good character growth as he would have the opportunity to overcome part of his curse/oath. I will never again wield the tools of war for personal gain. The DM had asked us at the start of the campaign what, if anything, we knew of the sword's item description. I had read it once years prior when it was first released, but I only really remembered it gave you wings and made you pretty. Jim said he had never read it and knew nothing. We both agreed not to read it until it was found. Being a side game, this campaign took over a year to progress due to inconsistent play. In this time, both Jim and I would indirectly break this promise. Jim admitted to me over a board game in private that his brother had read through the module and told him everything about the sword. Take that for what you will. I, on the other hand, was researching magic items with Truth Sight for another game I was running, and the sword came up in my search results, but I didn't realize until I clicked on the tab that I had opened it. In an attempt to not entirely break the DM's trust while still doing my research, I used CRTL plus F to search True Sight on the page. It was the D&D Beyond page. Read the item's relevant property, then move down to the comments to see if anyone was discussing said property. It was there I saw the woe responses that had steadily piled up over the years, and being unable to resist a good bit, tossed my own woe on the pile. Little did I know, the DM had followed me on D&D Beyond, and was notified instantly of my transgression. He decided to discuss it with Jim first. They are childhood best friends, and they confronted me about it together at the table. I explained it as above. I doubt they believed me. Fast forward to the big day. We arrive at the temple where the sword is housed, the scab, I believe it's called. We still have not made a decision as a table on who gets to try first. So, in what I think was an attempt by the DM to help us make a decision without telling us what the sword would do, I don't know if he knew Jim's brother had filled him in on it already. He decided to roll the sword's major and minor properties, per character, in front of us to help us make an informed mechanical decision on the matter. He rolled for each character and each NPC in the party. I don't recall everyone's results, but I remember one of mine was a 3rd level spell, Spirit Guardians, and Jim got a 2nd level spell, Spiritual Weapon, and +1 AC. Bear in mind, I was fully prepared to not be the character who got the sword, expecting it really. My main want was to just have Ruby rejected by it, so I could use that as a turning point in his story. Jim, on the other hand, repeatedly insisted that he be the one to go first, stating that he was the best fit for the +1 AC, something about not getting an armor upgrade through the whole campaign, which was odd since we had plenty of gold in the party funds, and we had been shopping multiple times, but also at one point half insinuating that he had a story reason for his artificer, wanting the sword to change his race/appearance, with his whole backstory about being cast out as a tiefling. I retorted at the time, since he was arguing mechanics, that Spirit Guardians was a very powerful spell in a monk's hands, and that it would give Rue something to reflavor as Annihilation. Rue had loose inspirations from Ramatra, Overwatch. Long story, not relevant. It wasn't going well, so the DM did his best and stepped up to resolve the issue with the fundamental principle of D&D. Let's roll for it. He put every member of the party, NPCs included, onto a table and rolled a public die. Krykendult was up first. The DM pondered for a moment as the devil stepped up to the sword and declared that the NPC pulls it from the stone and undergoes the transformation. While it's not the solution that I would have chosen, I think I can empathize with the outcome he settled on. Both Jim and I, agreeing for the first time all session, were flabbergasted at this result. We both tried to contain ourselves, I think, but I'm sure the DM felt instant regrets at the time based on our reactions. While I will never know his true reasoning at the time of the decision, the end of the session was him telling us above table that the sword had picked a temporary wielder while it figured out who amongst the party would be its final bearer. To top things off, after the dust had settled and we were packing up, the DM offered to tell us the sword's actual properties then, and when he got to the part about it maxing out a character's charisma, Jim looked over at me and confirmed he knew it would do that. To me, the only character in the party who uses charisma. Meaning, during the discussion about mechanical advantages of who gets the sword, he was arguing a +1 AC for him was better than +3 to the entire party's saving throws, aura of protection, from +2 up to +5. I don't know if he intended it as spiteful, but sincerely, I heard ringing in my ears for like 10 minutes trying to contain myself. The sessions that followed were not my proudest display and require context I don't normally like discussing. I have autism, high functioning, or at least I think I am, but with 30 years spent in my own head, I've developed some ways to manage the tendencies. That said, I was the one in charge of running Krykendult's stat block. The DM always asked players to run ally blocks in combat, so I was set to be using his updated stat block after getting the sword. The next session is still hazy, both because it was years ago and because of my emotional state, but I know I tried to, as politely as I could muster, ask someone else to play Krykendult. I swapped with Jim for Lulu. I figured the best way that I could handle it personally was by just putting the problem as far from my sight as I could and doing my best to carry on with the campaign. These were my friends at the time, and I had plenty of experience with what happens when I let my outbursts get the better of me. While I only have my own perspective for the sessions that followed, I'm sure I came off as extremely salty. There are only two things that truly upset me when it comes to D&D, and those are mechanical disparities, double standard rulings, players stealing/hoarding loot from the party, etc., and missed storytelling opportunities. I felt slighted on both fronts. Both that the character who would have gotten the best use from the sword was denied the chance to even try, and that neither of the two outcomes that would have been awesome storytelling opportunities for Rue came to pass. I don't think I ever directed any of this at the DM specifically, but he is quite susceptible to the emotions of those around him, and I'm sure my demeanor took a toll on him too. Fast forwarding more, we opted to redeem Zariel, save Elturel, and continue the campaign into Tier 3 and 4 to wrap up loose ends. We had beef with Archon and Tiamat. It's actually a really good progression for a campaign with as many rough patches as this one had. The DM made good on his word to have the sword choose a final wielder from the party, and immediately Jim put his hand up again and we went through the same song and dance. My stance hadn't changed. I just wanted to be rejected so I could get it over with at this point. Rue as a character didn't even want the sword, and Jim wasn't budging. Krykendult handed the sword eventually to Rue. To my shock, the sword accepted Rue as its wielder. Because Jim was, at the time, my friend, I thought it would be cool if his artificer at least got the thing I thought he wanted story-wise from the sword. So I asked the DM if he would be cool if we both grasped the sword's hilt and his character could get the divine makeover, to change his race or whatever. The DM agreed. Jim refused. This once again set me off, and I did my best to contain it. But I wouldn't say I expressed my bafflement in a healthy manner. Jim left the session early, and at this point all I could do was just straight up ask the DM if there was something I had missed, any piece of context that would make this make sense. All the DM was willing to tell me was that Jim never wanted the sword. The version of the sword I got was a heavily nerfed variant, having expended most of its power in the fight with Zariel. but I could upgrade it Vestige style to approach something closer to the sword's original power, but never equal. Jim would, in the following session, make a jab at me saying, "What's your problem? You got the sword," when really I got nothing close to the Sword of Zariel in any regard, either mechanically or story-wise. That's about all of the pertinent information in as close to chronological order I can manage. Some other things that could be of note are, Jim was very upset with how his class was fitting into the party, combat-wise. He expressed that he didn't like how I asked him for buff spells on the occasion, despite him seemingly having little issue buffing the DMPCs, and that he wanted to use his actions to deal damage, which I had no issue with. I was just confused as to why he would even prepare the buff spells, let alone agree to cast them on me, if that's how he wanted to play. I offered to help him build his next character for those purposes if that's what he wanted, to which he took great offense. But maybe I was too demanding and just didn't realize. And when we finally went our separate ways, one of the things Jim retroactively accused me of was building Rue specifically around the Sword of Zariel, which is crazy to me because I built Rue spontaneously in front of him, at the table when the DM proposed we play the module. And that is the story of my character who did not get to touch the real Sword of Zariel. I left some things out for expedience in an already lengthy post, and I can try to elaborate in the replies if needed. But without further ado, AITA,